It's undeniable that the people in our life won't stay forever. There are so many reasons that cause separations from the ones we used to be close with. Maybe their family moved, maybe the type of people they want around them changed, or maybe they're just gone now. Young, adult, old, the experience of losing someone never ends. What's always stuck with me regarding losing people is how we react. No matter how it happens, there's always an aftermath that sticks with us. Something to remember them by. Maybe an argument happened and it left you two on bad terms. Maybe one silently left and you never had the chance to say goodbye. Or maybe they felt like they didn't deserve a goodbye. Some were able to get closure, some weren't. Some might have gotten closure, but maybe it wasn't enough for them. There's so many ways to react to a situation of loss that sometimes gets muddled thinking what's the appropriate way to cope or deal with it. What's the right way to move on? It's so easy to get trapped in a cycle of what-ifs where your life will never really continue. It's kind of scary, being honest, having a future focused so heavily in the past. Now, to make a proper segue into the topic of this video, I do not know all the different ways someone can move on. What I can do, however, is talk about a show that extensively deals with loss and the different ways people can move on from it. Red vs. Blue is an iconic show that jump-started the machinima genre. Created by Roosterteeth, the show involved two teams in a box canyon in the middle of nowhere, Red Team and Blue Team. Over the course of multiple seasons, this group of idiots would get themselves wrapped up in adventures that they were definitely not prepared for, but did their best either way. The series is over now, and while I wasn't there for its peak, it's still an incredibly fun series that can get surprisingly emotional later on. Unfortunately, its popularity isn't what it used to be, and over time the series faded away until it quietly ended in 2024. It's sad, but it doesn't change the quality of the show and how amazing it is. Now, some quick disclaimers. Yes, this show is heavily dated with the language used. It's one of the few cases where I can actually say it's a product of its time, and surprisingly, they don't say that many slurs, which is honestly surprising knowing the climate back then. It definitely gets toned down later on, but I can say if you do manage to get through it, you'll come across a series that is filled to the brim with meaningful arcs that can really delve into the psyche of how people react to the loss of loved ones. With that being said, spoilers for almost all of Red vs. Blue, Season 1 all the way to Restoration. Let's start with a relationship that's focused on heavily throughout the series, Church and Text, or Leonard and Allison. To fully paint the picture of the relationship, I'm gonna quickly summarize certain events, and I'll be simplifying it for anyone who has never played Halo or engaged with its lore. And I do apologize if I get any information wrong. Red vs. Blue has had a ton of retcons and a lot of explanations and supplementary material, so I'm mostly going off what I remember. In the distant future, Earth was in a war of aliens, and a family was caught in the middle of it. A husband, a wife, and her daughter, Leonard, Allison, and Carolina. Allison would be drafted and later die in battle, leaving Leonard to mourn her death in a not so healthy way. He would soon enlist in the military as a researcher, specializing in studying AI and establishing his own secret project to help humanity against the aliens, Project Freelancer. One of the main aspects of Project Freelancer involved an AI that was created off of Leonard himself, known as the Alpha, or Church as I'm going to be calling him from now on. During the creation of Church, memories of Allison inside Leonard's head were so strong that the AI separated itself to separate Allison from itself, creating an AI based on Leonard's memories of Allison, which would later be known as Tex. Tex was an AI that was Allison, but it was an Allison based on what Leonard thought of her. Strong, independent, can fend off an entire army on her own. It was what he viewed her as, and it showed. However, because Tex was based on his memories, the memory of her death always remained. At the end of the day, Tex would fail. Tex would die, because that's what Leonard remembered her for. Essentially, she could rack up the best kill streak ever, but at the end of the game, she'd always fail no matter what. This single event, though, would cause a downfall of Leonard mentally, as he realized what the power of AI could do. His deceased wife is alive in some form, and his goals become conflicted between studying AI to support humanity, or studying AI to maybe, just maybe, have the chance to see his lover again. Throughout the duration of Project Freelancer, he would put heavy focus on AI, researching how to fragment AI, separating it slowly and slowly into different aspects. This would include torturing Church so hard that part of him would split, creating another version of himself based on what he was feeling at that moment. His anger was split, his logic was split, his happiness was split. It was all done to get closer to Allison. Even after multiple incidents with the AI going awry and having to cancel the whole project together, Leonard still wasn't able to let go of her. His obsession with her gets to a point that after Project Freelancer is over, after he was about to get punished for his war crimes with what he did with his AI, after he goes into hiding, he still is obsessed with reviving Allison. He does it over and over to perfect her, but her fate always remains the same. She fails. She dies. In his last moments, he's seen just rewind the video of Allison over and over again. He's been so focused on his deceased wife for years that he neglects his own daughter, Carolina, who's tried so hard to win his father's attention ever since he says eyes on his goal. Yeah, his daughter was a part of Project Freelancer, and he didn't give her a single shred of attention. His fate is sad, lonely, as he kills himself after losing everything. Leonard's story has always struck a nerve in me and how desperate he was to get his wife back. I jumped so far ahead head to explain the story, but this man is responsible for so much in the series. Because of this one dude who couldn't get over his wife dying, he set up forts with red and blue simulations to test his strength with Project Freelancers. He hides the AI of himself, Church, inside one of these simulations to make sure his creation is safe, thus creating the events of Red vs. Blue. The entire adventure of the series starts from him, and it's just a really interesting butterfly effect. This guy made his grief everyone's problems, and people get understandably pissed off with him in the series. This is a bad example of moving on. Not only is he not able to move on, but even at his last breath, he wasn't able to, and that's genuinely sad. He wasn't able to look at what he actually had. His daughter, Project Freelancer, wasn't able to see any of it because of his goals. Because of his uptight nature, all of this was just kept to himself, and by the time people figured it out, it was too late. The damage was already done. He killed and ruined so many people in pursuit of his goals. It's a very cautious tale of how much a loss can really stick with you and fundamentally change who you are and what you do. When you're so wrapped around yourself, you may not realize what your actions really are doing, and soon the end justifies the means. Let's now switch to the AI version of Leonard and how he learns to properly move on. Let's provide a bit of context first. The AI version of Leonard, who is Church, is based on Leonard's memories. Now I'm not going to explain all of it, but the AI gets shoved into a poor dude and Church now inhabits that body, don't ask questions. Anyway, because of some memory fucking, Church also has memories of Allison, but instead of Allison, it's Tex. Because of slight retcons, the real relationship between the two is slightly inconsistent, but one thing's for sure, Church is not over Tex. In this reality, Church and Tex used to be together, but that's no longer the case. And the moment Tex arrives, Church immediately warns the others not to get her involved. It's the typical bad blood you expect from being exes, and also the fact she's kinda evil. Tex is kind of an asshole. I don't know what memory fucking was going on, but Tex is kind of sadistic, enjoying hurting people at almost every instance.
I'm scared.
Church is very much attached to Tex. Despite all the bad times they had, he still says things like apologizing to her and saying that he still wanted to marry her. He's very insecure about his feelings, denying it at every moment, but still being very protective of her, especially when certain events happen. Their tension is drawn out for 5 seasons, but it's never the main focus. You can just tell that they never really get the chance to fully talk privately because of the events that happen in Red vs. Blue. It's something that isn't fully dived into, and on one hand, I'm okay with that because Red vs. Blue at the beginning was mainly a comedy series, but at the same time, I do like their relationship a lot. It's very love-hate, where they'll shit-talk each other at every point, but when it comes to sacrificing themselves for each other, they both do it at the same time. At the end of season 5, Tex sadly explodes in a pelican.
Tex? Church? What should we do? Do whatever you want. I'm going home.
Church, even with his attachment to Tex, just says fuck it and moves on. He never really got the chance to have full closure with his thoughts on Tex, and with Tex exploding, he's never gonna get that chance. Instead of feeling sadness, Church just gives up and accepts it because, being frank, he's had too much shit to deal with this series. It isn't until the events of season 6 where Church is brought back into action and discovers the body of Tex thanks to Agent Washington. Despite having time to move on, Church is still attached to her. He never fully got closure for what happened between them, and after seeing her body, it's pretty much confirmed that he'll never get that answer. What helps show his attachment to Tex even more is the fact that in season 6, he wants nothing to do with the events. He doesn't want to deal with the fact that he figures out that he's an AI or that Leonard needs to be taken down, no. He only joined Agent Washington because he heard that Tex was involved, and it's only by going down the rabbit hole that he finally accepts what he is, and saves Agent Washington by sacrificing himself to halt his evil AI fragments. And he dies. But he gets resurrected later on along with Tex in ways that I cannot explain, but his attachment to Tex still exists, and this time, he's able to do something that his other versions weren't able to do. This is Epsilon, the second AI version of Church. It's complicated, just accept that he's alive. Remember when I mentioned the whole AI fragmenting and how they represent parts of Church, his happiness, his rage, etc.? Well, one of them was Church's memory, and with the power of speaking about memories, a version of Church was built into the AI, creating Church 2.0. Epsilon is built off of Church's memories, meaning that he remembers pretty much everything the original Church did. This includes his memory of Tex and his attachment to her. Because of Epsilon being the memory of Church, he begins having flashbacks to before he was fragmented, before he was tortured and separated, and it leads him to an old facility base where he discovers an empty body that he uses to put Tex in. Remember how Leonard's memory of Tex was so strong and got turned into an AI of his own? Well, since Epsilon is the memory part of Leonard, or Church now, he's able to manually do it on his own, and that's how Tex becomes alive, because science. Because of the facility they're in, both Epsilon and Tex are able to figure out who she is, how she's a byproduct of the AI process, and that she was never supposed to exist. After a lengthy battle where Tex dies because she's always destined to fail, she's trapped in a storage device that Epsilon jumps into to save her. He's warned that the storage device will potentially close if he jumps in, but he does it anyway because this is his only chance at talking with Tex. This leads him to going through multiple simulations to find Tex, with it eventually having him redo the events of the early Red vs. Blue seasons to talk to her. When he finally does get the chance, he's able to piece together what Leonard and Church weren't able to do. And watching this scene for the first time really hit something in my head. It opens opened my frontal lobe, as some people would say, because of how eye-opening it felt watching it. On the third attempt, Epsilon is finally able to figure out what he needed to do in order to move on, in order to do something that the others weren't able to do. They didn't get the chance to say it, so he'll be able to say it for them. I'll let the clip play for itself.
There's something I need to tell you. I think it's important that I say this.
Wait a second. Look, I can take the whole at peace with the world thing, and I can even stomach all the accept your fate stuff, but just do me a favor, okay? Don't say goodbye.
No, Tex, no. I think I just figured out what the director couldn't. And Alpha either. It was you, Tex. All along. See, I thought we made you. The director and the fragments. But that's not the case. You made us. When the Alpha was created, you just kind of came along for the ride. You were so strong. You made a whole other person. He always wanted to find you. To get you right. To just see you one last time. And he wanted me to be able to do the same. To find you in here or go down another iteration. Figure out this little Tex problem. Figure out how to do it right. But now I know. I know how to fix all of this. How to end it once and for all. I just had to tell you 3 words. 3 words I wasn't capable of telling you before.
Oh, okay, wait a minute. Are you gonna say I love you?
No, Tex. No. I'm not gonna say I love you. I'm gonna say I forget you. I forget you. I'm letting you go.
It's such a fitting but tragic end to the relationship. We often think about what ifs, but in this series, we actually get to see those what ifs become reality because of these AI versions of these characters. We see a version where he delves into depression, with his entire existence dependent on recreating her. We see a version where he's still very much attached to her, to the point he's willing to dive into a rabbit hole just to learn more about her. And we finally see a version where he's able to move on, to forget about her, and not make his existence solely dependent on her. We do get one more what if in the final season of Red vs. Blue, Restoration, where another AI version of Church and Tex are present, and this time, they're actually able to be together, and honestly that's really sweet. The one thing that always caught my eye is the closure all these versions of Church or Leonard got. Allison died in war and was never able to properly say goodbye. The first version of Tex disappeared in the Pelican, and it's only until the third attempt that Church is finally able to get the closure he needs. No one else, just him and Tex, and it allows him to say everything he's wanted to say. It helps that after this point, Tex in Church's mind is pretty non-existent now. His focus isn't on her anymore, and it's a really nice development you can see in the series, especially when you reach seasons 11 to 13, which don't focus on Leonard and the freelancers, because that story is over. For Leonard and Allison, it took a lot of attempts for him to finally move on, but he was able to. Even if 2 versions of him had to literally die for it to happen, it's really interesting seeing the possibilities of what happened. Now you could debate whether ones are simulations, but honestly it doesn't matter anymore. Anyway, that's all I want to talk about in this video regarding closure and moving on. I was gonna make this video way longer, talking about Caboose and Agent Washington, but then I looked at the length of the script and I was like, okay, this is a bit too ambitious. I'm not doing all that. But I do love talking about Red vs. Blue, and maybe in the future I can make a fully fledged video dedicated towards it because I really do like the series and want to talk about it. Yeah, that's all for me though. I'm sleepy. I'm gonna go to sleep now.